It's Gilmore Girls season, which means I'm about to talk your ear off about one of my favourite on-screen couples, Jess and Rory. So I never really intended on making this video or talking about Gilmore Girls because it is an old show now and I feel like there's already so much debate about the show online, like I didn't really need to throw in my 2 cents. But I did briefly touch upon, on passing in another video, just how cheated I felt by the fact that Rory and Jess were not Endgame. And there were a few comments on that video of people saying like, you should make a video just talking about this. I'd watch it even if it was 2 hours long. And then I started my autumn annual rewatch of Gilmore Girls. As usual, went feral, frothing at the mouth as soon as Jess showed up. And so, fuck it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about Rory and Jess and make a video. And there is always this constant debate online about like who was the best boyfriend for Rory. As far as I was concerned, I was like, well, everyone thinks Jess. But I couldn't tell if that was just because like my algorithm knew I was Team Jess and so only showed me Team Jess content. So I did do a poll in advance just to make sure that the sort of figures in my head were right. And they were overwhelmingly people were Team Jess. So congratulations, everyone. You have great taste. I am a bit concerned about the fact that 8% of people said they were Team Dean. I have to just assume that this is rage bait. I have to assume these are either rage baiters or people who have not watched further than season 1 of Gilmore Girls. What? Who? Rage bait. Rage bait. Has to be rage bait. So speaking of rage bait, this is just a disclaimer. If you're watching this video and you are not Team Jess and you are Team Logan, or God forbid the 8% of people who are Team Dean, this video might be rage bait for you. It might make you mad. You might disagree with me. You've been warned. By all means, like, debate, have it out in the comments. I think Gilmore Girls is like one of the best shows ever made for like debating and getting into psychology and like why people do the things they do. So by all means, debate in the comments, but like, don't be a dick. This is meant to be a nice place for people to safely discuss the things they love. So, you know, if you really hate Jess, then this video might not be for you. Just so you know. What I love about Gilmore Girls is every time you watch it, I think your opinion on something changes or your outlook on something changes or you understand someone's decision a bit differently. But one thing that I never change my mind on, no matter how many times I watch Gilmore Girls, is that I truly believe that Jess Mariano's character was written with the intention that he would be Rory's endgame. And I just don't think they managed to write the ending the way they wanted, the way they intended, or like in the timeline that they wanted. I really love romance in TV because of the sheer amount of time they have to tell the story. Like, I'm a sucker for slow burn, and TV gives so much better slow burn than I think a film ever can. But I think a problem with TV when it's long standing is they don't know how long they have to tell the story. And so TV does this all the time where they'll build up a really, really satisfying slow burn, like tension-filled romance. But then as soon as the couple's together, they think, well, we're going to have years of this show left because it's a hit. We're going to have to break them up. And I think that is also sort of what happened with Jess and Rory. I think they were always intended to be Endgame, but it's such a crazy timeline that it never was ended correctly. And I do agree that Jess and Rory should have broken up in the show, absolutely. Like, their season 3 breakup makes complete sense. We'll get into it. But I do think Jess and Rory are supposed to sort of mirror Luke and Lorelai. And I kind of just have to assume that they're planning on making more Gilmore Girls because the way, I mean, A Year in the Life, we don't talk about her. She doesn't really exist to me. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing canon out of A Year in the Life is that Jess is still in love with Rory and that Kirk is still an icon. Other than that, nothing else that happened in A Year in the Life actually happened to me. But even though A Year in the Life doesn't really exist for me, it does end. Rory is going to be a single mother. She's going to have a child to who we have to assume is Logan. I think Logan is Rory's Christopher, like on paper who she should be with, who like Emily would want her to be with. But I think Jess is her Luke. And I think they're kind of trying to make the relationships mirror each other, but it's just, we've run out of steam. I don't know if we're ever going to get any more Gilmore Girls. I'm not sure I want it after the absolute shambles of A Year in the Life. I don't really think I want them to do more. I mean, if they make it, I'll be there on my knees begging for gruel like Oliver Twist. But I think that is what they were going for. And I do believe that it was always the intention of the creators to have Jess and Rory be Endgame. Call me delusional, I believe it. But anyway, getting out of A Year in the Life, let's go back to the beginning. And the way we're going to analyse Jess and Rory's relationship is, I'm just going to go through chronologically and talk about the development of their relationship, because I think that's the easiest, most logical way to go about it. So I mentioned, I think Gilmore Girls is such a good show because it's so like rich to analyse, and to analyse people, psychology, like it's such a good narrative on things like class, privilege, wealth, upbringing. So I think it's quite important that we first establish the dynamics of our characters' backstories. So let's start with Rory. So Rory was brought up in Stars Hollow, this sort of suburban, small, community-driven, very safe town, like zero crime. It's kind of like the American dream white picket fence town. She was brought up in a very loving, supporting, safe household. Yes, she had one parent, like her dad was fairly absent, but she has this insanely close community all around her. She's so never alone. She's always so supported. She's looked at like she's the people's princess of Stars Hollow. Like she can do no wrong. She's so intelligent. She's so perfect. She's just like the town's dream daughter. But she is removed from the rest of her family, which I don't think necessarily matters because she has this community. But obviously at the start of the show, she's reconnected with her sort of estranged but very, very wealthy upper class grandparents. And with that, she suddenly starts to get these upper class privileges, like she has to go to Chilton, which is a private school full of very wealthy upper class people. And it also means she gets into like Yale through, I mean, she doesn't get in through nepotism, she does get in through her own application, but she just suddenly has a lot of upper class privileges and like a wealthy safety net. And also with this sort of tie to like her upper class familial roots, she always had high expectations in Stars Hollow. Like she was always really intelligent and everyone always thought she was going to be this success and she was perfect, but it was kind of quite standard expectations. And when she gets these sort of upper class connections, her expectations go a bit more to like, she's not just going to be successful, she has to be like uber successful. Like she's on a playing field with like the 1% now. She's going to be expected of what was expected of Lorelai, like to marry into another upper class rich family, carry on almost like this pure blood, like DAR, whatever that means, but it's quite like elite. And in Gilmore Girls, Rory is seen as this perfect child, but she does behave to that expectation of her. Like, she is a real goody two-shoes, annoyingly so. Like, she never rebels, she never questions anything or pushes anything. Like, she never does anything exciting like go and underage drink in a park and pass out on a bottle of vodka. She's really this perfect, can do no wrong girl. And I think she carries that subconsciously. And I think it is naturally part of her personality to not be a rebellious kid. But that just sort of reinforces this cognitive bias she has and this internal narrator telling her that she has to be what everyone thinks she is. So when she has her first relationship in this picture perfect American town, she has this like picture perfect high school sweetheart, tall, dark and handsome, pursues her but he's respectful. It's really this like teenage dream relationship. And from the outside it looks so sweet, so picture perfect. But really with Dean I feel like that's all it was. Like I think externally it was really sweet and perfect and there was nothing necessarily wrong with it, but it was quite flat, surface level. At their core they didn't really have much in common. And not at the start, I think it's a bit further into Gilmore Girls that this starts to come about, but Dean is a bit more like hands-on worker. I think he wants to go out and work to provide for a family so that he can have a wife with kids and his wife can stay at home and like cook and clean, like a very traditional relationship. He just wants to live quite like an honest and traditional life, which is absolutely fine. And I don't think he is necessarily completely incompatible with Rory because of that. Like, he doesn't not respect Rory's ambition and Rory's want to pursue academic endeavours, but I do think it is a point of contention. But when Jess comes along, he's like the opposite of Dean. If Dean is like the picture perfect high school sweetheart for this perfect golden child, Jess is like the neglected, unloved bad boy who's gonna like tarnish this perfect girl. I saw a TikTok the other day when this girl, she was just talking about like the allure of bad boys, and one of the things she mentioned was that the bad boy reflects the rebellious nature that like a good girl suppresses. And I found that really interesting because obviously I had Jess and Rory on the mind, and I did think that kind of works for them. I do think that Jess's need not to care what people think, like he does what he wants, like Rory could never have that outlook on life because of the way she was raised, with this sort of expectation of perfection on her shoulders. But yeah, Jess and Rory, different upbringings, like single mothers, sure, but like Rory was very, very loved and protected and safe, encouraged, only ever really given positive reinforcement. Jess was pretty much neglected. Like when we meet Liz later in the show, she really doesn't reflect the like backstory they gave her. Like I actually quite like Liz as a character in the show, but the way she brought up Jess is absolutely horrible. Terrible mother. His mum does love him, but she didn't show it correctly. She didn't support him the way a mother should. That is the complete opposite of the way Rory was raised. So they're very opposites in that way, but like internally at their core, their interests, what they care about, how they want to move through the world, like their deep ambitions, whether they believe they can have those ambitions or not is a different question, but like their ambitions, what they want out of life are very similar. They have the same interests. When they meet, it is like an instant connection. They sort of see each other in ways that other people don't. Jess clearly does think Rory's perfect. It's like his dream girl, but he doesn't just see this external shell of perfection. Like he does see into her, what she cares about. Like they can have deep conversations in a way that Rory doesn't really have with anyone else other than maybe Paris. Whereas I think Dean sees this shell of this perfect girl, like, oh, this is the perfect high school girlfriend. But like to her core, it's never that deep. Was it ever that deep? With Dean, no, I don't think it was ever that deep. With Jess, absolutely, it was that deep. So we first meet Jess in season 2, episode 5. He is forced to come here, not because he wants to. And Luke takes him in, again, not because he offers or because he wants to, but because he's told, Jess is coming to stay with you. As I say, he's had a childhood of like borderline neglect, instability. He doesn't know who his dad is. He's super, super intelligent, but it's not nurtured in the correct way. And in sort of like a very cliche, but very like realistic fashion, all this internal pain and anger is released in his behaviour. He has his guard up. He's angry at the world. He doesn't like let people get to know him because his experience is that what people who know him and are supposed to love him are the ones that are gonna hurt him and leave. I think Jess thinks people will hate me regardless. I'd rather they just hated me from the get-go than they got to know me then hated me. It's so sad. And I think a lot of people hate Jess when he comes in, like, oh, he's just a dickhead. And yeah, he is like this troubled dickhead teen, but you just have to look at what his story is, and it's completely understandable why he is the way he is. But then as soon as he meets Rory, it's like an immediate exception to the rule. Like when he meets Luke and Lorelai, he's like silent. He just sort of nods, walks off, wants to be alone. As soon as he sees Rory, it's like, hey, and he walks into the room, assesses the situation, like looks at all the books on a shelf, sees it's like a books he loves and has read 40 times. It's almost like he instantly knows that this is going to be an important person to him and someone he can actually connect with. And I don't believe in love at first sight. I really hate insta love, but I do believe in like instant chemistry. And you know, when you meet someone and you're just like, I just don't get on with this person. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just we're not on the same wavelength. And then sometimes you'll meet someone without even speaking. You're just like, I just know I'm on the same wavelength with that person. I think that's kind of what happened with Jess and Rory. As soon as they met, their brains were firing the same neurons, and those neurons, they connected and they knew. Like Jess just immediately knows he likes Rory and that he wants to get to know her. And then obviously in that episode, he does still try to rebel because he's not alone with Rory. He tries to get Rory to sneak out with him. Very quickly learns that, you know, she's not that type of girl. She's this good, well-behaved princess. And I mean, everyone in Stars Hollow hates Jess the moment he arrives, but Lorelai instantly hates him. She catches him with the beer, and to be fair, she does try to be nice and talk to him, but like that's really the only chance she gives him. As soon as he sort of is rude to her outside at the house with the beer thing, I think that's immediately where she dismisses Jess, which I don't blame her for. We also have to remember that Lorelai's really young in the show. Lorelai is a really similar age to me in the early seasons of Gilmore Girls, and it's easy to forget that because she has like a 16-year-old child, which is terrifying. But she is. Lorelai herself is still just a girl in her early 30s. But I also think Lorelai really hates Jess because they're the same person. Jess, I think, holds up a mirror to who Lorelai was when she was that age, and she does not like what she sees in the mirror. So I do think that is a big reason why Lorelai does not like Jess. And the first few episodes Jess is in, they always end with a really sweet Jess and Rory scene, which is very interesting, and I think proof that it was written very early on that he was coming in to be a love interest. He wasn't just coming in to be a character. He was coming in to be Rory's love. Because Jess's first episode ends with him giving the book he swiped back to Rory and saying,
I just want to put some notes in the margins for you.
What?
And it's like this confirmation now to Rory that he has a depth to him, that they have stuff in common. And it's clearly instant attraction from both sides, but obviously it takes a very long time for Rory, especially, to become aware of this. But like the sweet little walk away and look and sort of like nod of acceptance. They understand the same jokes. They read the same books. Dean could never. So we've got Jess in the show now. We've established that he and Rory are similar, that there's something gonna brew there. Over the next couple of episodes Jess is in, it's really just him kind of trying to show off for Rory, and I think put the feelers out to her, but in a way that is safe for him and safe for his insecurities and fear of rejection. And like Jess pulls this prank and Rory's a bit like, it's not funny, but she clearly finds it but a bit funny. And Jess learns that she has a boyfriend and she's going out with Dean. And also, Rory kind of tells Jess off a bit, gives him a bit of a lecture on how he should be nice to Luke. And when Jess gets criticism from anyone else, he doesn't really listen. But with Rory, it means something to him. She means something to him. So he intakes that criticism, because at the end of the episode, he fixes Luke's toaster for him, does a nice thing, does an act of service. I'm going to get into acts of service because we have a lot of examples where Jess's love language is acts of service. But he does this act of service for Luke, fixes the toaster, but he then sort of looks to Rory for approval. He obviously did the thing for Luke, but really he did it for Rory. Okay, so the next Jess episode is where they have that big dinner at the inn and they go on those like sleigh rides in the snow. So in this episode, again, we sort of see the absolute neglect from Jess's mum. She doesn't want him home for Christmas. And it's just, people like to really hate on Jess. But this is what, like I say, this is what I love about Gilmore Girls. Like, there is so much psychology behind why he is reckless and pushes people away. And it's reinforced, I think, in this episode with the whole, like, his mum doesn't want to have him back even for Christmas. What a bitch. Just further proof that Jess is out in the world on his own, or at least he feels like he's out in the world on his own. He feels unwanted. He doesn't feel deserving of love. Like, his own mum doesn't even want him in the house. And Jess tells this to Rory when he hops on her little sleigh and they have a little cute sleigh ride around Stars Hollow together.
My mom didn't want me to.
I don't believe that.
Luke told me it was his idea that I should stay. It wasn't his idea.
And we see how, like, comfortable Rory is with Jess and how comfortable Jess is with Rory. And as I said before, Dean and Rory, like, really at their core, there's not much compatibility there in terms of, like, who they are as people and their interests. And Jess picks up on this because he literally says to Rory,
Hey, what do you and Dean talk about?
and Rory literally can't even answer the question, which I think says a lot. I mean, to be fair to her, if someone just asked you that off the cuff, how do you answer that question? You'd be like, well, what do we talk about? I mean, there's not one single topic. But I think this does get into Rory's head, maybe. I don't think she really acknowledges it, but I think it probably plants a little seed of doubt. In this episode as well, we get, I mentioned before, why I think Jess's love language is acts of service, because an act of service he does for Rory is he like sabotages the good snowman so that Rory's snowman will win the contest, which, you know, obviously is a dick thing to do, but the point is he did it as an act of service for Rory. And at the end of that episode as well, we get that longing across the room stare Dean notices. Again, Rory suppresses it, but it is confirmation that she is into Jess. She fancies him. They have this connection, even if she doesn't want to admit it to herself. The next episode we have with Rory and Jess, it's yet another act of service. It's the episode where Rory gets put as like the face for the video store, even though she doesn't want to be or give permission. And Jess gives her another act of service because he swaps a dirty movie with a kid's movie so that the video shop will hopefully get in trouble. And it's just like a really short scene and a little nod, but it's just sweet, even though he's a bit of a crook. And the episode after that is the picnic basket episode. Again, I think this is another sort of way of Jess showing he cares about Rory, but he's doing it in a way that's safe for him, because if it backfires, he can just say, oh, it wasn't because I like you, it's because I'm messing with Dean. They hang out at the river, it's super cute, they laugh, they get on, they talk about, like, Hemingway, like, she never talks about Hemingway with Dean. And off camera, they also hang out for the rest of the day, because when Rory goes home and says she was with Jess, Lorelai really lays into Rory and is basically like, stay away from him. You kind of get where Lorelai's coming from, like, as a protective mother who doesn't want bad influence on her daughter. But, like, come on, Lorelai. We all know that if we're told we can't have someone, it makes us want them a hell of a lot more. And I love that Rory stands up for Jess. And then again, the episode ends with Rory and Jess. Rory calling Jess on the phone because she just wants to talk to him. She wants to hang out with him. She likes him. She's into him. The next time we see Jess and Rory, it's once again Rory defending Jess to Lorelai. Rory has to beg Lorelai to let Jess clean out her gutters. Please, mother, let this poor neglected boy clean out your rain gutters. Obviously he goes over there, he's really animated when he sees Rory, tosses her the book, they have a little conversation. As soon as Lorelai's there, he withdraws into himself. And Rory, a bit like with Luke, she now tells him off for not making an effort with Lorelai. Jess intakes Rory's criticism and he actively makes effort to hang out with Lorelai and have lunch with her, which is again his way of giving an act of service to Rory, which, like, throughout the course of the show, I think one of the biggest things I love the most about Jess and Rory is how much of a positive influence they always are on each other. Here in the early years, Rory is the only one that can basically give Jess any form of advice that he will listen to and actively try to improve himself on. If anyone else said these things to Jess, he wouldn't listen. But Jess, when he hears these things from Rory, actively tries to be a better person. We'll see that later on in the show. And in A Year in the Life, the only time Rory makes positive changes in her life is when Jess tells her to. So I love that kind of like continuation throughout their entire story. Is really Rory and Jess are the only people who ever have positive influence on making themselves better. In that episode as well, it's when Dean notices that Rory's lost her bracelet and they have a bit of a bicker about it. And Dean is such an angry red flag here. This is where Dean's character just starts to get like obliterated. He's such a red flag. Like, he's so angry about it. It's like, well, she didn't lose it on purpose, did she? And also, it's like, it's not a diamond Tiffany bracelet. It's like made out of string. Chill out. But she's like absolutely freaking out about losing this bracelet because Dean will be mad at her. And it's like, well, do you want to be with someone who's mad at you for accidentally losing a bracelet? Yuck. That's what I say. That the 8% of people who say they're Team Dean couldn't have made it this far in the show. There's no way you get to this point in the show and you're still Team Dean. I do not buy it for 1 second. Because the next episode is a massive Dean red flag as well. So it's Rory has a night into herself. She wants to be alone because she never gets time to herself. But that obviously goes haywire when Paris barges over and then Jess comes over with food. Genuine mistake. Again, we could like do a whole video analysing just this episode. But let's power through because I've already been talking for ages and we're only halfway through season 2. But yeah, when Dean finds that Jess is there with Rory, he is rightfully angry. He has a right to be suspicious and he has a right to be angry, but he's such a red flag. He shouts at her. He's this really tall guy powering over Rory and he's shouting at her in front of Paris, "Boy, get out my house, never speak to me again." But before Dean comes over and it gets broken up, I love the whole scene of Paris and Jess and Rory together. They're all like chatting about their nerdy stuff and their literature and getting on really well. They're having so much fun just eating and talking and joking around. We find out here that Jess reads Jane Austen because of course he does, what king. And like, if Dean was round instead of Jess, if it was Dean, Paris and Rory, the three of them would not be having that much fun. Rory would not be enjoying herself that much. Yeah, I just think they're super cute and it's just proof that Jess and Rory have a hell of a lot more in common than Dean and Rory do. And then at the end of that episode, we learn that it wasn't Luke who sent the food over, it was Jess. And he did it himself. Again, acts of service. And they're really cute at the end, but obviously Lorelai and Dean see, like, it's very clear that they are into one another, even though absolutely everyone denies it, because our perfect little princess Rory would never fall for this guy that we hate. The next couple of episodes we'll just gloss over because nothing super significant happens, but it's just sort of like light flirty banter. But their dynamics do change over the next couple of episodes because Rory kind of goes into this demeanour where she is like annoyed at Jess. And she starts bickering with him and acting like he annoys her and she hates him. And I think this is just sort of her putting up a shield after what happened with Dean and like the arguments she's been having with Dean and the judgment she's clearly getting from like Dean and Lorelai. She is the perfect person and people are unhappy with her. She's a people pleaser and she's going to please the people around her. And the way she's going to do that is by like not being friends with Jess, even though she wants to be. And then we get into the episode with the car crash. So I think this is massively where their relationship takes a turn. Up until now, it's just kind of been maybe a light flirtation, getting to know each other. There's been tension there. But from this point on, I think there is quite a significant shift in their relationship. So first of all, we have them at the diner together and Rory is trying to like study with Jess, but he doesn't want to. He just wants to hang out with her. And I think Jess knows He has so few opportunities to be alone with Rory in a circumstance where he's allowed to be. So naturally, he doesn't want to study. He wants to hang out. He wants to do something. He wants to be cool. He wants to woo her. We still have Rory at the beginning of this episode in the state of mind she's been in, where she's sort of annoyed at Jess and she's trying to push him away because she's suppressing how she really feels. And one of my favourite Jess and Rory moments in the whole show, I think, is just the way Jess looks at her in the diner, just stares at her when she's not looking. It's so beautiful. I could cry. And then we go out in the car to get ice cream. They talk in the car and they're getting on really well and they're laughing and they're joking. And I don't know how you could possibly watch this and not ship them. That's crazy. What you on about? What do you mean? Alexis and Milo have so much on-screen chemistry together. And at this point in real life, off-screen, they were falling in love with each other in real life. And I just think you can tell. It's so reflected on screen. Like they're falling in love both off and on screen. And I think that's beautiful. There's a few on-screen couples where I'm just obsessed with like the heat of the chemistry of them. And it's because they were in real life couples and like off screen they were in love or falling in love. I just think you can tell. Sometimes you really can't tell, but sometimes you really can tell. And Jess and Rory, you can really, really tell that the actors were also falling in love. Please. And they get into a conversation where they're talking about the future. Like I said, people can talk Jess's ear off about like what he should be doing, how he's making the wrong choices. He will listen to no one but Rory, and he kind of does dismiss Rory in this conversation, but it clearly gets to him and gets in his head because he trusts her judgment. He listens to what she says. He wants to impress her. Obviously, we don't find out for a while, but in season 6, we find out that he wrote a book, but it's because of her support and because she believed in him. And I think this conversation in the car is like, I think the only time we see it on screen. She clearly says it a lot of other times, but this is where we see like her saying, you could do anything, you could be anything you want to be. And obviously they want to keep hanging out with each other, so they drive around some more, and that ensues into them being in an accident. So after this car crash, everyone, and I mean everyone in the town, blames Jess. Jess is this reckless kid, it was all his fault, and he gets shipped off to New York, has to leave Stars Hollow. And like over the course of the episode, we just see Rory basically talk to loads of different people in the town, and everyone in the town is just like, don't worry, my perfect golden child angel princess. It was that bad boy who's an influence. He's gone now. Good riddance. And like Rory is like begging for punishment as well. She literally is just like, oh, well, it was my car and I crashed into your bench. She really, she's like yearning for punishment. She's yearning for some criticism and no one will give it to her. And I think this episode in particular is a really fascinating study to look at if you want to understand why Rory slumps later in life. Like why she can't handle criticism, why the moment she gets 1 ounce of serious criticism, she packs it all in and she can't handle it. This episode where everyone's like praising her, shitting on Jess, is just proof of why she hasn't been trained in like the mental resilience to be able to handle criticism. So in particular, there's a scene that I picked up on that I've never really paid attention before in my rewatches. It's a conversation Rory has with Taylor. It's just a perfect example of how this town enforces perfectionism on her. And then after she has a conversation with Taylor, the same thing happens with Babette. She's just saying, oh, it's not your fault, it's all his fault. Like, good girls get tempted by the bad boys all the time. Again, she has the same thing with Lorelai multiple times. And again, and with Emily, it's just, she's yearning for some criticism and no one will give it to her because in everyone's eyes, Rory is perfect.
What if Dean had been driving? Would everyone be assuming that it was his fault?
No, because if Dean had been driving, there wouldn't have been an accident, because Dean is a much more responsible kid who loves you and would have been driving more responsibly.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things people talk about in Gilmore Girls is the deterioration of Rory's character throughout the show. And I think Rory gets way too much hate. Like, A Year in the Life is a different story. I said A Year in the Life, it's not even canon to me. It just it's like bad fan fiction that I don't consider real. I totally agree. In A Year in the Life, Rory's character is terrible. Like, she's a serial cheater because apparently it's funny that she has a boyfriend she keeps forgetting about. What? So, A Year in the Life aside, we're talking just Gilmore Girls. I feel like Rory is one of the most hated on-screen characters. There's a few on-screen characters people always hate, like Carrie Bradshaw, Rory Gilmore. Rory Gilmore is always someone that people hate and think is a terrible person. I disagree with this. I think she gets way too much hate, and I don't think you hate Rory Gilmore. I think you hate the flaws that her character mirrors in yourself that you hate. I see a lot of my teenage self in Rory Gilmore. So there's this really interesting question, psychological question of upbringing in Gilmore Girls. So Jess, he has the opposite childhood where he's basically neglected and only ever criticised. He's always told that he's bad, that he's wrong, that he's not doing enough to be worthy of anything. He's unloved. And Rory's the opposite. She's completely coddled. But I mean, there's proof in the show, out of these upbringings, who is going to have the most resilience? Who is going to accept that failure is a part of life? Who's going to have the most self-discipline to pick themselves up when things go wrong? I'm absolutely not saying we should neglect kids in order to give them strength of character, by the way. But there is this fine line, I think, between where protecting and coddling a child too much creates weakness of character. It's something I actually really relate to Rory in this sense. I definitely wasn't a princess child. I wasn't overly coddled and told I was perfect. But I was I went through school very easily. I always got A's even though I never tried. I found it very easy to just be a good kid and follow the rules. When you're in school and you're growing up, I just think it's really easy to just do as you're told. And you get praised for it. You get praised for following the rules and being good. I definitely wasn't anywhere near as good as Rory Gilmore, you know. I was still sneaking out with my friends into a field, pretending we were staying at their house for a sleepover and stuff. But I've always had this really irrational fear of confrontation, arguments, being told off. Honestly, until my late 20s, my nervous system couldn't tell the difference between being chased by a bear or someone telling me that what I did was wrong. It honestly took me until my late 20s to fix that in my own psychology. And that's what I think Rory has, because it's really easy to go through life when it's this laid out path, when you just follow the river and follow the rules and you're praised for it. Well, that's all fine. But once you're out of the river and you're plonked on land and everyone's just well, off you go then, and there's suddenly no rules, you do have this crisis of identity. That's what I think I had in my early 20s. As soon as I was put out in the world, I was just well, now what? Now what? There's no one to tell me what to do. And I don't know, there's so many paths I can follow. Which path am I meant to follow? And I think that massively happens with Rory. But on a much more extreme level, it happens with Rory. She's so praised, she's so consistently told she can do no wrong, that the second she is told her path is wrong and that she is not worthy, she crumbles and she completely loses her identity. So, yeah, I'm not saying that we should neglect kids, but I think there is a reason that Jess goes from being this kid who's going to fail to being successful in forging his own life path, because he's accustomed to failure. He's accustomed to people having no expectations of him. The more expectations a person has on them, the harder it is to live up to expectations. And Jess had no eyes on him. When there's no eyes on you, you can try things and fail and it doesn't matter as much. When people's expectations of you are high and they're watching you, you almost can't meddle and make mistakes and try and fail because people are watching your every move. So I went off on a tangent there, but I do think that is a massive thing when it comes to Rory's character and people criticising her. Yeah, she makes mistakes, but she's human. She's literally just a girl. I'm literally just a girl. You have to make mistakes in life to learn lessons, and she does things wrong, but I do think she was raised that way. She was raised to not be able to handle criticism, and she gets way too much hate. So that's my opinion on that. Let's get back to their story. Where are we at to in the story? Yes, after the car crash, Rory's basically begging to be punished, and no one will punish her. They'll only punish Jess. So the next time they communicate is Jess calls her from New York. This is long distance, and she flops on the bed, yearning for this boy, and this perfect princess who can do no wrong skips her fancy, expensive private school and gets on a bus and goes to New York, even though it's a school day and she's got to go to her mother's graduation that night. She wants to see Jess so badly that she blows all that off. This perfect person who's never broken the rules in her life. They have their really cute sort of day in New York together, where they just have a lovely time hanging out. And I think this is the first time Jess sort of allows himself to realise that his feelings are returned. He's clearly always sort of subconsciously known it. They like to stare at each other across rooms. But her getting on a bus and going to New York, skipping school, he knows how much school means to her. She skipped school to go see him. You don't do that unless you really are into someone. And obviously then the bus is delayed. Rory misses Lorelai's graduation. Once again, I mean, Lorelai does get angry at her at first, but then Rory's leaning into it. She's like, yes, I should be punished. What I did was wrong. Like, she's feeling this. She's feeling how wrong she is for being into Jess, even though she won't admit it to herself. She knows it. She won't admit it to herself, but she knows it's wrong because she has a boyfriend. She did this reckless thing and she missed a really important event in Lorelai's life, and she's literally begging for punishment, and Lorelai's just like, no, my sweet angel, it's not your fault, it's Jess's fault. Once again, Rory's begging for punishment, begging for criticism, and she cannot get any. And Lorelai says to her,
Maybe, honey, you are falling for Jess.
as I say, Rory has this weight of perfection on her shoulder. She's a people pleaser. She can't admit it to herself. She's like, no, I love Dean. But after this visit from Rory in New York, Jess realises he wants to be in Stars Hollow. He wants to be in Stars Hollow to be near Rory. But I also just think he wants to be in Stars Hollow because he realises that it's better for him. He has Luke. He has a life that he started to build and that he can hopefully continue building. He goes back to Stars Hollow. He obviously goes to Suki's wedding to tell Rory that he's coming back. And we get their first kiss, baby. Short but incredibly sweet first kiss. Rory is obviously immediately like, oh my God, I've just cheated on Dean. Freaks out, which is the correct response, Rory. I wish Rory kept this response to cheating throughout the rest of her life, but she doesn't. Is this where Rory first gets a taste for cheating? Maybe. But she runs off. She's like, don't tell anyone. Naturally, that implies like, you know, what I've done is wrong. Don't tell anyone until we can sort it out. But she doesn't sort it out. She just runs off for the summer with Paris and literally never speaks to Jess again until we get into season 3. God, I've been filming for almost an hour and a half. And I'm only just on season 3. So we got to speed this up, people. Otherwise, it's going to be a 5-hour long video. So in season 3, we open. Jess is in Stars Hollow. Rory is in Washington. She's trying to write to him, but she can't. She basically just can't face herself and her emotion because her emotions are not what they're supposed to be. It goes against this perfect person she's supposed to be. And so she just sort of doesn't deal with it and doesn't acknowledge it and suppresses it and sweeps it under the rug. Paris is getting ready for a date. She asks Rory,
How do you know if a guy is right for you?
and Rory just basically describes Jess. She doesn't describe Dean, her boyfriend. She just completely describes Jess. So we know that Rory knows she likes Jess. But as I say, it goes against this expectation of her. Everyone loves Dean because for some reason he's who she should be with. He's like the perfect image of this teen sweetheart. I feel like we're witnessing like Rory have real like cognitive dissonance. She knows how she feels, but she suppresses it and she goes against it because it's not what she's been taught to want. She's been taught to want like this picture perfect relationship. She's not supposed to want someone like Jess. And so yeah, she has this like cognitive dissonance. It's like what people who are brought up like in really religious backgrounds and like people who are brought up in cults have. There's this like psychology for people who have these really extreme beliefs put on them when they're brought up, like people who are brought up like super racist, and people who are brought up in like cults, and people who are brought up to be like really extreme religions. If they get to a point where they realise that everything they've been taught is probably a lie, like you'd think that those people then realise that they're wrong and do the work to change their mind. And a lot of people do, but like an overwhelming amount of people, like it's researched in psychology, they go the other way. They'll realise that their beliefs and everything that they've been taught is incorrect, but the cognitive dissonance is so uncomfortable that they find it easier to just pretend they believe the lie, to live in delusion, because that is less painful than doing the work to undo everything you've been taught and to like analyse yourself, look in the mirror and make changes in yourself. That's so much more painful than being delusional. So a lot of the time people will just lean into the delusion and believe it more. I almost feel like that's what Rory's doing. Obviously it's not the same as being brought up in a cult. She knows that she shouldn't be with Dean. She knows that she's into Jess, but that is not what she's been taught to want. And so she like leans in to the delusion that like she's happy with Dean. Because when she gets back to Stars Hollow and after she sees Jess is going out with Shane, they almost turn into like bickering enemies. Like she acts like she hates him. And I think it's because she's leaning in, because she's trying to prove to herself that she believes it when she doesn't. Because that's what happens sort of the beginning of season 3. She just like argues with him and acts like his enemy. Like Jess rightfully calls her out for like, why are you jealous? You didn't contact me once and you're still with Dean. But no, she's just like scowling at him and doing stupid stuff. And I think it's this way of trying to prove that she's the person that people want her to be and that she believes the things that people want her to believe. I mean, she takes this out on Jess by like pretending that she doesn't like him, but she also takes it out on Shane when she's working in like the store where she buys the hair dye, which is a real dick move from Rory. But it's because she's not addressing her emotion, and so she's doing that classic thing of like where you don't actually deal with your emotions correctly, they're going to come out in the wrong place on the wrong people. It's like shouting at Shane is sort of like the in real life equivalent of people being unhappy in real life or having really bad days, and instead of like talking it out with someone they love or like addressing their emotions, they go on the internet and leave really mean comments in the comment section. Like that's what Rory does here with Shane. She hasn't addressed her emotion. She won't accept that she's into Jess, and so she takes that out by just like being angry at Shane for no reason. There's also a scene in that episode where they're dyeing Lane's hair that I made a note of in this rewatch, because Lane says to her,
I finally have a first love, like what you and Dean have.
and you can just see Rory's face. She's just like, yikes. Again, like, people think I have this perfect relationship. I know I don't. I don't want to let people down by revealing that the relationship's not perfect, so I'm just going to pretend it is perfect. And I think this is a real danger of people who get into serious relationships when they're too young. I mean, it's not actually necessarily just what happens to young people. I think fully grown adults do this all the time too, but people stay in relationships because there's nothing inherently super wrong. Like, Rory doesn't not like Dean anymore. Dean is still a good boyfriend to her, and like she's into someone else more than she's into a boyfriend, but she doesn't want to end the relationship with Dean because she doesn't want to lose the investment. It's like the sunk fallacy cost or whatever it's called. Like, once you've invested into something for so long, like, you don't want to give up because you've invested so much into it. And Rory has this pattern throughout the show. Like, Rory never breaks up with anyone. She's always dumped, which is relatable. First time Dean dumps her, it's because she doesn't say I love you back. Who dumps someone for that? The second time she breaks up with Dean, he leaves her. Obviously, the end of Rory and Jess's relationship, it's because he leaves. The third time she breaks up with Dean, he leaves her again. With Logan, I don't know how many times they break up. One of the first times they break up is because Logan's sister rings Rory's like, sorry to hear you broke up. That's how she finds out Logan broke up with her. And then at the very end of the show, when they break up, it's because she doesn't want to marry him, but she doesn't want to break up. She's like, I want to be with you, I just don't want to get married. And he's just like, basically, if you don't want to marry me, you don't want to be with me, so this is over. And then again, I know I said A Year in the Life doesn't exist and isn't canon, but in A Year in the Life, that boyfriend she has that she never breaks up with, because apparently that's a hilarious joke, she just keeps forgetting to break up with him, and she can't bring herself to break up with this guy. And it's just like, it is a pattern throughout Rory's life, which I think is very interesting. And I think tied into the fact that she just wants to please people and doesn't want to let people down, because to dump someone is to not please them and to let someone down. Yeah, I think Rory's upbringing is fascinating on how it affects her character. But yeah, once again, let's get back to Rory and Jess. So the next couple of episodes, we have the sprinkler episode where Rory is just in heat for a soaking wet Jess. Same. Am I allowed to say that, by the way? Is it perverted to say that because they're like 17 or 18-year-olds in that show? Does that make me a pervert? I hope not. But they have a nice moment there, which is then completely like juxtaposed by the next episode where Lorelai and Rory decide to egg Jess's car. Lorelai is fine breaking the rules by egging someone's car, but she's not fine with like Rory dating who she wants to date or make her own life decisions. And the next episode we get into is the dance marathon. Oh, finally. We're finally here, guys. We're finally here. I've been filming this video for ages. We're finally at the point where they're going to be a couple. So in the dance marathon, they're both being petty little bitches, trying to make each other jealous. And I really hate the way they use Shane and they use Dean here. I don't support that at all. But Dean rightfully is just like, fuck this, I've had enough. You clearly like him, I'm out. And Rory really should have broken up with Dean, as I say, but she didn't. Dean had to do it. But following that, Jess does do the right thing. I mean, he didn't do the right thing by stringing Shane along, but he does break up with her before getting together with Rory. So we're a couple now, and let's enjoy it while it lasts, because it sure is fleeting. So they get quite a cute little awkward fumble into their relationship. They're nervous, it's awkward. They have a near kiss that Luke breaks up, and then they sneak off and have their first kiss. Well, not their first kiss. Their first, like, in a relationship kiss. And honestly, this kiss, I think, is one of my favourite on-screen kisses ever. I love it. It's so cute, like, the emotion in it. Like, you can just see how nervous they are, but how into each other they are, how happy they are. They're, like, the giggling together. It's just perfection. But then it's ruined because Rory has to run off and see Dean, which I really wish she didn't do. But again, I do think it's relatable when you understand how much of a people pleaser she is, how much she's been brought up to, like, never upset anyone and be perfect. Because she goes to Dean to basically be like, to make sure he doesn't hate her and to apologise. And I just think that's incredibly human, especially at that age. Like, she did care for Dean. She didn't want to hurt him. That's why she didn't break up with him. But Dean is rightfully like, oh, boo-hoo, someone doesn't like you, Rory, which is exactly what she needs to be told. And I hate that this is the first time in her life when someone said that to her. But yeah, I think the point of her going to Dean in this way is, again, just proving Rory's character of how uncomfortable she is at being disliked, not being seen as perfect. Because in the next episode, the Thanksgiving episode, this is proven because she doesn't want to, like, flaunt her relationship with Jess. Like, she doesn't want to kiss him in public. And although no one is sort of like saying to her, oh, why are you with Jess? You shouldn't be with him anymore. She knows their opinions from the previous year, everyone has voiced their opinions to her. They're not really voicing them now, but she knows how people feel, and she knows that people are going to be disappointed in her. People are going to think that she's just been like enticed by this bad boy, and they're going to see her as less than perfect. And obviously it is out of respect for the fact she's just broken up with Dean, and she doesn't want to flaunt it to Dean. But like, even in places where Dean isn't, she's not comfortable openly being with Jess. But it's because I think she's so aware of what other people think of her.
That was some half-ass kiss you two had. You gotta give it a little something, honey.
Bye, Babette. Bye, Maury.
Bye.
The whole town is watching.
So at this point in the show, I think Rory, pretty much for the first time, is sort of having to deal with this conflict of doing something that people don't necessarily think favourably of. So she's having a bit of a change in how she's coping with her identity. But I also think Jess does. They're the complete opposites. So like we said, Rory's like this people pleaser. She's seen as perfect. She's always with people. Jess is like this lone wolf in the world, and he's not used to serving other people. Like, he's left to his own devices. He is really on his own in this world, and that's how he's used to navigating. He removes himself. He goes around the world alone. And then suddenly he's in this relationship where Rory, who is used to like Dean with the same mentality of like community and people loving him and wanting to spend time with him, like Jess isn't used to doing stuff he doesn't want to do. So when he doesn't want to go to the carnival, he doesn't think immediately like, oh yeah, well I'll go because Rory wants to. I think he's still in that mentality of, well, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. Whereas Rory's mentality is more like, if people want me to do this thing, I'm going to do it because I need to please them. Jess is more like, I don't want to do that, and I'm a lone wolf in this world, so I'm not going to do it. So they're sort of like opposite people, like I said, really opposite upbringings. Externally, they're so different, but like internally at their core, who they are, like their core humanity, I think, is what's compatible and what's got that pull towards each other, which is why I think they're so right person, wrong time. And people say right person, wrong time doesn't exist. But to me, like, Rory and Jess are just like proof that it does. And I do agree with the people who say it doesn't exist to an extent, because I think it's a dangerous narrative in real life to believe in right person, wrong time. Because if you truly believe this and you have like a one that got away, like, you can waste your life in like the what ifs and in limerence. So I do think in real life it's quite an unhealthy and dangerous narrative, but that doesn't make it not true. Are you telling me that if Rory and Jess met as adults when they'd both healed and they were both fully formed functional humans, that they wouldn't have fallen in love, but it would have worked out because they were in the right place? Come on. But because they met at this point in their life where they were struggling with like basically the opposite demons, and they both had to figure out their respective shit and grow up and become the people that they needed to be apart, they may never really get the chance that I think they should have. I think it's tragic. I think it's really, really sad. And as I said earlier, I do think if they ever did more Gilmore Girls, the intention is that they would end up together, but I don't know if we're ever going to see it. I just have to believe it was right person, wrong time, the one that got away, but eventually they made it work. This story makes me so sad. I've bummed myself out. I thought I was going to get hyped up talking about this. Now I've just bummed myself out. Anyway, the next episode is the one where Jess gets attacked by a swan. So at the beginning, they're really cute. She asks him to have dinner with Emily. Rory accidentally ends up hanging out at Miss Patty's with Dean and a room full of people, but Jess finds out. He calls Rory, questions her about it, because it's like Dean's jealousy. Like, Dean is this constant thread, which makes sense for Jess. Like, he had to watch Rory be with him for like a year at least when he knew that she was into him. And Dean is really threatening and mean to Jess, which again is understandable. He like stole his girlfriend off him. But there is this, I think, fear of Dean from Jess. Jess knows that people want Rory to be with Dean, and Dean is still lurking about, she was with Dean for a long time. Of course he's going to be insecure about Dean. But they communicate very well when they have this phone call and they sort things out. And I think it's just, they have the fight at Emily's, but the phone call beforehand, the conversation they have at the beginning and the makeup they have at the end, I think prove that they are learning how to communicate well together and be better for each other. But obviously we get to the dinner at Emily's where Jess is late and he has a black eye. And Rory makes the assumption that it's because he had a fight with Dean. And I think this is what does it for Jess. This is just like another thing for Jess. He's just like, oh, here we go. Perfect Dean again for perfect Rory. When I'm just this shithead that everyone hates. So he storms out, they have the argument. And again, he's a teenage boy, he's hurt, he's wounded, he has his guard up, he's threatened, he's questioned, and he lashes out. But obviously he has this conversation with Luke out on the water.
She picked you.
God knows why.
She knows that's all that matters. Jess, being jealous of Dean...
I am not jealous of Dean.
Being jealous of Dean is pointless. You're just going to drive Rory away.
Then they see each other, he apologises, they make up. Super cute. And then Rory goes home and tells Lorelai she's thinking of sleeping with Jess. Well, we all know how that goes, don't we? It doesn't escape my notice, by the way, as well, that Jess is the only boyfriend Rory does not sleep with. Which is a real shame for her because he'd clearly be the best one in bed. The next episode is the one where Jess doesn't really call Rory. And this kind of annoys me because it's a bit of a backstep after the Swan episode. But I think it, again, is just to prove what I said before about like the carnival thing. Like Jess is so used to just being out in the world on his own and not having to worry about other people. So he doesn't really realise it's an issue. But again, it's showing that they're working through any problems they have. Like at the end, they do make things right. But it's one of my least favourite Rory and Jess episodes. But I think they're gearing up for the end of the season for them breaking up. Like they're starting to show the cracks of right now they're not right for each other. Right person, wrong time. We'll skip over the next few episodes because nothing of significance really happens. We get a few cute little moments. Mostly it's like the inn burning down. We find out that Jess has been working instead of going to school, and Luke like steals Jess's car so that he can't go to work. And then the next episode we get to is the party episode where Jess gets kicked out of school and he fights Dean. So I very nearly didn't make this entire video because I didn't want to discuss this episode. Yeah, I really don't want to talk about this episode, but we're going to have to. So let's just talk about it. So the start of the episode, they're cute, they're happy, they're lovey-dovey. Jess has made an effort to get on with Lane's boyfriend. They're all going to go to prom. Jess agrees to go to prom. He clearly doesn't want to, but he's going to do it for Rory because after the last few episodes, it's like been the trials of Jess learning how to be a good boyfriend and learning how to put other people first, even though he's so used to only ever having to worry about himself. But he's going to go to prom. He's going to go for Rory. It's going to be cute. He goes to get tickets and he can't because he finds out that he's not allowed to graduate and that he is either being kicked out or he has to resit the entire year. And he's not going to resit the entire year. So he's kicked out of school. There's a YouTube channel called Mended Light where it's a therapist and he goes over like a lot of like movies and scenes from show, but he has a whole series on Gilmore Girls and he does an episode on this episode. I'm going to link it in the description below, but I'd really recommend you go and watch that because it's really interesting to hear like a therapist's point of view on what Jess is going through here. So go and watch that if you want a bit more like in-depth psychology on this episode and what Jess is going through. But yeah, Jess not graduating, obviously he's brought it on himself by not going to school. But I think it's this shock to the system for Jess because, as I say, he's like a lone wolf. He's alone in the world, and being alone in the world and like doing what he thinks is right for him and like operating from what he wants to do for himself has protected him in the past, and I think it's worked for him in the past. Like pushing people away has worked for him because he hasn't been hurt by them. He wanted to work because he wants to make money. He wants to pave his own way in the world, and like going to just school in Stars Hollow where he has no friends isn't him paving his way in the world and making something for himself. I think that's why he went to work, because he wanted money. He wanted to buy a car. He wanted to like start being an adult in the world. He didn't want to go to school. He felt too smart for that school. So he did what he thought was right in paving his own way. And that served him before, but I think suddenly it backfires. Because suddenly it's like, well, you can't graduate. And I don't think he knows how to handle this. He doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't tell Rory. Again, I think he wants Rory to think highly of him. He doesn't want Rory to see him as a failure. Rory's going to Yale and she's like in this posh private school. She was too clever for Stars Hollow High. He already feels like he doesn't deserve Rory, and now he's not going to graduate. Like, he should tell Rory. Rory would be there for him. But in the same way, like, Rory didn't break up with Dean and pretended to hate Jess because she was lying to herself about how she really felt. It's kind of what Jess does by not telling Rory or anyone about the fact that he's been kicked out of school. By not saying it out loud, it's almost not quite true yet. Like, as soon as he tells someone, it's something he has to deal with, and it's a truth that's going to affect his entire life. So he doesn't tell anyone, he keeps it internally, but he's obviously having this like real internal catastrophe. What's he going to do with himself? He doesn't know how to tell anyone. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He's humiliated. He's ashamed. And he goes to this party where he should be having fun with his girlfriend, but obviously he's like having a mentee be. He's having a breakdown. Like, his life is falling apart and he's feeling like a failure. So he goes upstairs alone to think, to hide, to get some space. And Rory follows him up. And then we get a scene which is nice and obviously takes a turn. And the reason I was scared to even make this video, and especially talk about this scene, is because in the video where I mentioned Rory and Jess and people were like, please make a video on Rory and Jess, there were also a couple of comments that were just like, I can't believe you would ship Rory and Jess when Jess sexually assaulted Rory. And I read that, I was just like, what are you talking about? I literally didn't even know what they were referring to. And then I realised what they were referring to. Oh God. So, however you watch and react to this scene is valid. If you watch this scene and it triggers you, maybe you've had an experience like this in real life that was really traumatic and difficult for you. If you watch this scene and what you take from this scene is sexual assault, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I personally do not watch this scene and think, that's sexual assault. Should he have done it? No. Did he go outside her boundary? Yes. Was he wrong? Absolutely. But she does say no and get up. So he pushes it. He pushes a boundary. She clearly doesn't want to. He keeps going for it. And then she's like, no, and gets up. To me, I don't even know how to talk about this because I know people are going to get mad at me. And it's such a sensitive subject. To me, this is maybe like an attempt at sexual coercion. I think sexual assault would be like more physically holding her down, not listening to her when she said no. When she says no, he stops. She says no and gets up. That is the end of it.
Jess.
And obviously it starts consensually. Not that I'm saying you can't be sexually assaulted if you at first give consent. Absolutely not. Of course you can. But I think you really have to understand everything I just said, like the psychology of where Jess is. He's a teenage boy who's having like an absolute mental crisis and he wants to distract himself with his girlfriend in a sexual manner. Was he wrong to do it? Absolutely. He should have asked consent. But I think people, in the same way I think people judge Rory too harshly in the show and give her too much hate. I think people take this scene a bit too black and white. It's really not, I don't think it's a black and white thing. I think it's a really complex situation. And I think by all means, have your personal opinion on it. And if you don't agree with me, completely valid, but that's just my personal opinion on that scene. Because when Rory gets upset and leaves the room, he's still like frustrated, but he's frustrated with himself. He's not frustrated with her. I don't think he's frustrated with her. I think he's just lost. He's just internally lost. He leaves. Obviously, the whole 2-season build-up of Jess versus Dean comes to a climax. They fight. and police come, Jess leaves. Oh, God, I feel really bad for Jess here. Yes, he can turn to Rory, and he should have turned to Rory and told her what was going on instead of like just being emotional and in his own head. But at the same time, like, that's what he knows. I keep going back to backstory and the importance of their character from how they're raised. But like, it's so true. Like, Jess reacts in the way that he knows how, in the way he knows how to protect himself. And I just feel so sad for him at the end of season 3. Like, his departure from the show here is so harsh, because the next episode, his dad shows up, his estranged dad. He's never met his dad before, doesn't know who he is. His dad just shows up out of the blue, then runs away again. Luke tells him, you're not allowed to stay in Stars Hollow if you're not going to go back to school. So what is he meant to do? His mum doesn't want him. Luke says he can't stay in Stars Hollow anymore. And he does the only thing he knows how to do, be a lone wolf in the world, push people away. So he just leaves without telling Rory and goes to find this dad that he doesn't know in LA. Should he have done that? No, absolutely not. Of course he should have spoken to Rory. I think it's difficult as well, because in order for Rory to look after Jess, by default Lorelai has to look after Jess. And obviously Lorelai and Luke are this unit, but Luke is the one who kicked out Jess. It is this weird sort of like snake eating its own tail cycle, I feel. So of course Jess should have confided in Rory, but he doesn't. And I think, again, understanding his character and everything he's experienced in life and like what his truth is about the world, he doesn't want to disappoint Rory, he doesn't want to let her down, he doesn't want to be a burden to her. He wants to provide for Rory and be her equal. And at the minute he feels like a drain on her, like he feels like he'd be a succubus on her and he'd be bringing her down even more than he thinks he already is. So he removes himself quite cowardly. It's like pre-phone ghosting, basically, is what he does. He just leaves. And he goes to LA to find his dad. Then his dad doesn't want him. No, you can't stay here. Jess has to literally beg for his dad to let him stay with him. And then he's like, yeah, maybe like a couple of weeks. Jess is like really just thrust out into the world, forced to find his feet. Jess has no safety net. It's like the only safety net Jess has is to resit school, then he can stay with Luke. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to rely on someone else. He just wants to be able to rely on himself, because everyone he's relied on in his life he feels has let him down. And so obviously we don't see Jess for a little while, because he goes off to pave his own path in the world. And even if he wanted to come back to Stars Hollow, he wouldn't have Rory, which is the only person he feels he can trust and who does truly love him. She leaves to go off to Europe for the whole of the summer, backpacking, and then she's off to Yale. So even if he was to go back to Luke in Stars Hollow, he wouldn't have Rory there with him. Right person, wrong time. God. So now we're into season 4. We've got no contact. Jess isn't even in the show anymore. Rory goes off to Yale. We first see Jess again in episode 12. He comes back for his car because he learns Luke was the one who stole it in the first place, which, come on, Luke. And we have multiple run-ins. He runs into Lorelai. Again, she's just like, she's over you. You know, again, just reinforcing everything we've been saying for, well, the last 2 hours of filming. Don't know how long this video is going to be. Just reinforcing, like, Jess, I think you're a piece of shit and you don't deserve Rory. Even Luke's just like, stay away from her while you're back. And we get 2 run-ins. Jess takes this on board. They bump into each other in like the coffee shop and again in the library. Then they get the run-in in the street and Jess finally shoots his shot and he tells her that he loves her.
I love you.
And again, he, before she can reject him, walks away and drives off. He tells her how he feels, but he doesn't want to stick around for the rejection. And he removes himself. And I think in season 4, we start to see Rory's downfall begin. Obviously, it doesn't really happen until the end of season 5. But we do start to see Rory's downfall, I think, in season 4, where she gets told she's taking on too much at school. She gets a D and she gets told she has to drop a class. She's not able to do everything that's expected of her, and she doesn't know how to deal with that. And after Jess just came back and said he loved her, his sort of like, the way she copes with this is she she goes to Dean and literally cries on his shoulder.
I'm not supposed to drop a class. I'm not the drop a class person. I get good grades. I handle things.
Come on.
And this is where Dean and Rory start to reconnect. God, do we have to get into this? So let's just skip over the next bit. Obviously, Rory and Dean start to reconnect. The next we see of Jess is Liz is going to get married and he needs to come back for the wedding, but Luke goes to see him. We see he's living in this horrible like bed share where it's just like a big room with a bunch of mattresses that he's sharing with a bunch of guys, and it's all mouldy and gross and it clearly stinks, and it's just Jess really has to go through shit to bring himself up, proven by the shithole he's living in here. But he comes back with Luke. Luke and him have quite a nice building moment at this point in the show. But this is where Luke gives Jess the tape, like the self-development tape on like, you deserve love. So like in proof, I think that Jess is building his own life and trying to be better. Like he's out in the world, he's paying rent, living independently, making his own way in the world. Like he does read the book Luke gives him. Like he does, like he is trying, he's trying to better himself, which is why I hate Lorelai when she sees the book and then like takes the piss behind his back to Luke. Like who reads that kind of stuff? People who need to feel better about themselves and who want to improve themselves, Lorelai. Maybe you should pick it up and give it a read.
I can't believe you're not mocking this book, which is so pathetically mockable.
Well, maybe it's more pathetic if people don't try. And maybe he's trying. You ever think of that?
But after reading this book, Jess is like, let's shoot my shot again. He goes to Yale to see Rory and he finds her with Dean. Dean and his shit haircut. And again, puts it out all on the line. Run away with me. Be with me. You couldn't rely on me before. You can now. But it's just still not the right time. Also, like, run away with me. She's in university where she can't run away for you. I mean, it's summer. She could run away with him for the summer, I suppose. Realistically, like, be real, Jess. You don't need to run away together. Why don't you just go out for dinner and exchange phone numbers? He shoots his shot, but he shoots it way too hard. She rejects him. But I also think Rory kind of just doesn't allow herself to give Jess another chance. Like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It's like an ego thing. She's been publicly abandoned by Jess. And so, like, even if she wanted to, her ego wouldn't allow her to go back to him, especially not right now, because people would look at her and think, what an absolute idiot. So it's like, it's ego. She doesn't want to be an idiot. She doesn't want to be perceived as one. So even if she wanted to run away with Jess, she wouldn't. And after that confession, in the next episode, Rory speaks to Lane and describes what happened. And she explains how inconsistent and like how much she couldn't rely on Jess to be secure, which unfortunately is true at this point in their lives. But I think her realisation of this is what makes her go to Dean. I don't really think she wants to be with Dean. She's basically getting rinsed as well by everyone for being single and not having a boyfriend for a year. Like, as if being single for a year is crazy. But everyone's just like, oh, you know, your love life's dead, Rory. And after this confession from Jess, I think she just goes for the opposite thing, which, as we know, is Dean. Dean always wanted Rory. I mean, Dean is married now. That's crazy. She loses her virginity to married Dean. And obviously this is a terrible thing for Rory to do. She should know better. But also, again, you got to take into the circumstances of where she's at mentally. And it's not like she was forcing it on Dean. Dean was hanging around with her. Dean wanted to reconnect with her. And she mistook the attention she was getting because he was unhappy in his marriage. She mistook for romance, I think. And here's the thing as well. I mean, obviously, Rory, as we know, is a bit of a serial cheater throughout Gilmore Girls. But Dean lets Rory be like the side chick. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna leave Lindsay, even though he has no intention of doing so. He lets her just be his mistress, basically. And Logan has a very casual affair with her and is like seeing other people at the same time. Jess would never. Are you kidding me? Jess would never let Rory be a side chick. Are you joking? He would never. I saw this thing, I can't remember where I saw it, maybe it was a TikTok someone did, but someone basically said, out of Dean, Jess and Logan, Dean and Logan are susceptible to being red-pilled, but Jess could never be red-pilled. It's so true. Like, Dean really wants a trad wife after being like left for another man by Rory, and like after Lindsay leaves Dean because he literally had an affair. You can just imagine him like watching Andrew Tate and being like, oh yeah, fuck women, and being red-pilled. You can see it. I can see it. Logan, I don't know if he'd necessarily be red-pilled, but like he's definitely very conservative because he's from like proper like 0.001% wealth, like generational wealth, real elitism, probably hates like working class people. I mean, he does, like just look at how he treats Jess when they meet in season 6. I don't know. I just feel like Dean and Logan are probably really right wing, but like, you know, the opposite ends of the spectrum right wing. And Jess would never be. Jess would be so humanitarian, so ethical. He would protest against genocide. Maybe where your political leaning is what boyfriend you ship Rory with. Oh God. Anyway, we get into season 5. Logan enters. Logan's an absolute dick when he enters. He's very much just this like snobbish, entitled, rich kid. Could literally never do anything wrong because he would have the protection of like wealth, lawyers. Like even when they get done for robbing this yacht, like Rory gets a ridiculous amount of community service and Logan is just off scot-free. I don't necessarily hate Logan. I think when he's introduced I really, really dislike him. Like how he treats Marty, because Marty works to make money for a living and like is a server at a party he was at. Logan's the type of person that would like treat the wait staff really badly.
Just because you pay somebody, it doesn't mean that you can speak to them as if they're beneath you.
Actually, the fact that this is a free country means that I can speak to anyone in any manner which I choose.
That being said, I don't hate Logan. I don't hate any of the 3 boyfriends. I have obviously a massive bias and I think she should be with Jess, and I think Jess is absolutely like leagues above better than the other 2. She breaks up with Dean. I think their relationship just proves how incompatible they were for each other all along. She gets into this sort of friends with benefits relationship with Logan that eventually turns into an actual relationship. And I don't hate their relationship. I think it serves her at that point in her life. I think all the boyfriends served her at that time. Like I say, Dean was this picture perfect boyfriend for like her high school, small town, suburban life. And now she's at like an Ivy League school and she's with all of these really rich, elite people. Logan is the person that fits that identity of what she's supposed to be. Again, this perfect person she's supposed to be. Dean fit it in high school. Logan fits it now. Logan is who like Emily and Richard wanted to be with and marry. And she's handed opportunities by association, like, again, these upper class privileges. She gets one when she can go and work for the newspaper through Mitcham. And I touched on it before, so I won't massively mention it again. But this is where we get the Rory downfall, where she drops out of Yale because she gets told,
You don't got it.
And as I say, like, at this point, I've been filming for 2.5 hours. Everything I've been going on about in this video is how Rory was raised, was built to fail her, because she doesn't know how to cope with this criticism and this failure. And so she just quits.
I'm not going back to Yale next year.
And while I don't hate Logan, I don't think he necessarily should have done what Lorelai did, which is like, I'm not talking to you unless you fix this. Like, that's such conditional love. And what you need from a parent is not conditional love. But I do think Logan should have challenged her more to go back to school. Instead, Logan himself is just like, it's temporary.
Again, temporary. Have a drink.
You know, he buys her this Birkin bag and she doesn't even know what one is, which just again proves the differences in them. Like, Rory doesn't want to be bought a Birkin bag. It just shows again how, like, I think Logan was right for her externally at this point in her life for appearances, and they definitely had more in common and more compatibility than she did with Dean, but I still don't think Logan is the one and is the person she should end up with. Obviously, a lot more people are Team Logan than they are Team Dean. And while I don't hate Logan, I actually think he contributed to Rory's downfall. I said what I said. But yeah, as I say, Rory's upbringing, like the second she wasn't considered perfect, she had no worth. And yes, it's up to Rory to fix this in herself, but she reacted with the cards she'd been dealt and the way she'd been raised, in my opinion. And like, you have to make really big mistakes like this sometimes. Like, sometimes it takes knowing you're on the wrong path to get really, really far down the wrong path. Sometimes you don't know you're making a mistake until it's far too late. And you do need to learn your mistakes by making them yourself. And I think that's what Rory massively does. But most importantly, the thing that makes Rory come to her senses, fix her life, work towards making things right, is reconnecting with Jess. Why did you drop out of Yale? Jess is what makes Rory go back to Yale. Jess is what makes Rory go back to Yale. How could you be Team Logan? Let's go back to the beginning of that before the you dropped out of Yale thing. So when Jess shows up again, it's just after Rory is starting to question it herself. Maybe she probably would have got there without Jess's input, but Jess's input massively was just like a slap to her face, because they always improve each other and each other's advice is always what's made them better people. And I find it really interesting in this episode because the last time they saw each other was like the two occasions where Jess shot his shot and got turned down, and they haven't seen each other since. But he turns up, walks through the gate, and it's a very soft like, hey, hey, and they're happy to see each other and there's not really any animosity. And I think that's such an interesting dynamic for them to be in, because you'd think that Rory would be a bit more guarded at Jess suddenly showing up after the last meetings they've had. So I think that's really interesting. But they talk, we learn that Jess has got his shit together. Like, there was a real maturity gap between Jess and Rory when they were teenagers, and there's still one, but it's like inverted. Rory was set up to be such a successful like teenager, and Jess was brought up to be a real failure as a teenager. But those things, it's almost like this sort of like oxymoron paradox where Jess's shit teen years made him really successful in his early 20s and Rory's like perfect teen years have made her like a failure in her early 20s. Fascinating. But you know, obviously he's written a book, he's got a job, he works at this publishing house, and he couldn't have done it without her.
Tell you that I couldn't have done it without you.
Thanks.
And they both openly admit that they're nervous.
Are you nervous?
A little. It's been a long time.
I'm a little nervous too.
Good, I'm not alone.
It breaks my heart. And he shot his shot at the end of season 4, failed. He's got his shit together more. He's got a job, he's going to be a published author. He comes back to Rory again to shoot his shot, and he's going to ultimately fail again, and I can't be arsed. They agree to go out for dinner. Jess is clearly pumped, like, yes, she wants to talk to me, she's going to hang out with me again, I've got my shot. Logan turns up, yeah, this is my boyfriend. Fucking great. Dean 2.0, he's got to go through it all again, only now he can't because he doesn't even live here, doesn't even live near her. How's he going to compete with that? I despise Logan in this episode. Like I say, we can get to psychology. I think Logan's psychology is also really interesting. It's the opposite end of the spectrum, like completely the opposite end of the spectrum to Jess. Jess had nothing, can do whatever he wants in life because no one gives a shit. Logan, so much on his shoulders to be the person that is expected of him. Really fascinating, but I'm not actually going to get into Logan's psychology. I need to wrap this video up. Jesus Christ. I hate how Logan treats Jess here. Like, Jess has done so much to better himself. He's not doing anything wrong, but I understand why Logan is jealous and has his guard up and tries to push him away. Obviously, then we get outside till we get to the whole Jess just lays into Rory like, what are you doing? What's going on with you? You are living a life we used to make fun of. Why did you drop out of Yale? Why did you drop out of Yale?
Why did you drop out of Yale?
Sparks something in Rory. Anyway, she goes in, like the old days where she used to have to defend Jess to Lorelai. She goes in, defends Jess to Logan. And she goes back to Yale. The next episode, she immediately after what happens with Jess, she moves out of Emily and Richards and she starts trying to get a job and she reapplies to go back to Yale because of Jess. Thank you very much. Oh, and not to mention, it was just Rory's birthday. Jess is like, happy birthday, by the way.
Happy birthday, by the way. Wasn't that a couple weeks ago, your birthday?
Because he knew it was her birthday. Whereas like a couple of episodes earlier, Logan doesn't realise her birthday's coming up. So Logan, her boyfriend, didn't know her birthday was coming up. Granted, she clearly never told him, but he also didn't ask. And Jess knew it was her birthday. Happy birthday, by the way. Oh my God, it's just meant to be. Anyway, the next time we see Jess is where Rory goes to the, like, book event in Philly. Between that, obviously, stuff's happened with Rory and Logan, where he's sort of cheated on her when they weren't together. A bit, we were on a breaky. But really, I think that is just... Her and Logan should have broken up then. Her and Logan, I just don't think should have got back together. I think that should have been the end of her and Logan. She goes to Philly and obviously Jess kisses her and she pulls away and she's like, I'm in love with Logan. And Jess, my baby, he's just heartbroken and she leaves and that's the last time we see Jess in the show. It's right person, wrong time, and it's still not the right time. Jess is in the right place, but Rory still has work to do. Rory still has to find herself and better herself. And it's just heartbreaking. It just makes me so sad. It bums me out so much, man. Especially because then we got a year in the life and I was just like, yes, let's bring it home, baby. I just want to slap a year in the life in the face because they had so much time as well. They had like 4 movie-long episodes and they did absolutely nothing with it. Like I say, the only thing that I take as canon from the show is, once again, Jess fixing Rory's life because she listens to him, because they're the only people that listen to each other and influence each other positively. You should write a book. She starts to write a book and he's still obsessed with her, looks through the window. I just have to kind of assume that off show throughout the years, because they're connected through Luke and Lorelai, I just have to assume that they spend Christmas together and stuff. Like, does Jess go to Stars Hollow for Christmas and obviously Rory's at home for Christmas? Do they not almost have Christmas together as family? They're almost in a weird way like in-laws. I mean, especially after Luke and Lorelai get married. Luke is Rory's stepdad and Lorelai is now Jess's aunt by marriage. They must see each other at like Christmas at least. So in my head, in canon, they connect over writing. They're like each other's beta readers and critique partners, and they see each other at Christmas and they just fall back in love. That's what happens in my head with Rory and Jess. Yeah, I just think that's the crazy thing about Rory and Jess, and I think that's why it sticks with you, is because it's unresolved. When you're reading a book and you can't put it down, one of the reasons is because like the chapters are on cliffhangers and there's questions left hanging and not everything's resolved. When a story's unresolved, you want to keep reading, and Jess and Rory are left unresolved. And so I think that's why we're all still so hung up on it, or at least I'm still so hung up on it, because it's unresolved. And yeah, that really bums me out, man. That really bums me out, man. That's the story of Rory and Jess. And that is why I think they were written to be Endgame. I don't know if anyone is going to watch this video because this is the longest I've ever filmed. And I don't know how I'm going to cut this down. I don't know how long this video is going to be. So if you watched this video till the end, you are such a G. If you did watch to the end and you get to this point, why don't you leave an emoji in the comments? An orange emoji. An orange for autumn emoji. And if you want to hear more from me and you haven't already done so, I do a monthly newsletter, and it's just a roundup of all the things I've been obsessing over the course of the month. So if you want to join the newsletter, the link will be in the description below as well. So happy Gilmore Girls rewatching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for listening. Bye.